Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Let the Right Ones In podcast. I'm your host, T.
And I'm Matt.
Sorry if I sound off. I'm in a bad mood and I'm tired. But anyway, for this episode, we're going to talk about Bojack the Horseman, aka Bojack the Depression Horse, which finished up, earlier this month? Last month?
I think it was last month. Late last month.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, anyway, recently finished on Netflix, and we're going to talk about it. Yay!
Yay!
Oh, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen it or care about spoilers, finish it up and then come on back. Or if you don't care, stay around. But just as a warning, there are spoilers. Oh, and also a fair warning, we did not rewatch the whole thing. The first season came out in 2014-ish. So we'll probably mainly be focusing on talking about it in a general scope and mainly the lower half of the series. There's 6 seasons, so probably mostly focusing on what do you think, season 3-ish?
Yeah, 3 on.
Yeah, so just a general thing. In case we get a detail wrong or something, that's why. So I guess general thoughts on the show.
I enjoyed the show overall. I feel like maybe there was a little too much fluff, just like a hair. It didn't ruin the show for me. It's still 9 or 10 out of 10. But yeah, I feel like some of the Todd stuff could have been cut out. Some of the Mr. Peanut Butter stuff could have been cut out.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially near the back half when it was clearly getting more dramatic. In the beginning half of the show, I felt like it really fit because Bojack stuff hadn't got that much serious yet. But yeah, basically I felt like it was a nice break in the first half from Bojack stuff. And then later, once it became more serious, of course that's what the viewer would be focused on. And so during the later half of the series, it just kind of felt like an unneeded aside to what the viewer was really going to be, clamoring for more of.
I get it, but I didn't enjoy a lot of the Todd Mr. Peanut Butter stuff, especially the Mr. Peanut Butter stuff. Mr. Peanut Butter was annoying, to be honest. I could have did without him completely. But my guess is it was probably to take a break from how dramatic or serious shit could be. Because sometimes it could be really serious and a bummer. So it's here's a break from that. Here's something wacky. Okay, now that you're more leveled out, here's back to the serious stuff. But I would agree with that.
Yeah, of course. You did want some asides, as it is, half a comedy. So, of course, you do want some asides from the seriousness. But I just never felt that. Mainly, really, the Mr. Peanut Butter was the stuff I had a problem with. Mr. Peanut Butter was just always a little bit too goofy in a series that, especially in the later half, was very serious. Now, Todd's stuff, he knew when to be goofy, but then there was also some drama to his character. But you never really got the punch the rest of the show had with the Mr. Peanut Butter stuff. And then, of course, notice that neither of us are mentioning Princess Carolyn's asides, because that also had a very good mix of both comedy to the drama, much like the main story itself. So I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I had no problem with the Princess Carolyn asides.
Yeah, at first I didn't like her, but the more the show went on, I was like, oh, okay, I get you. And I ended up really liking her, especially at the end. So I didn't have really a problem with the asides and stuff with her, because it made sense, kind of working woman who's trying to have it all, but sometimes you cannot have it all. So
yeah, I took the same path with Princess Carolyn's character. Did not like her at first. One of my most beloved characters by the end. Of course, Todd you love and cherish from the beginning. So it's nice to have one of those characters in a show that you come to love over time, where you might not necessarily at the beginning, depending on your point of view.
Yeah, And they tried to kind of do the same thing with Mr. Peanut Butter. Like, they tried to be like, oh, well, he's not always happy, peppy, fucking oblivious all the time. But it didn't, I don't think that panned out.
Yeah. Mr. Peanut Butter was just too stupid.
He was just too much. I don't know. I could have done without Mr. Peanut Butter. I mean, I guess he was somewhat of an important character because of, his relationship with Diane and Bojack and all that. But I could honestly have done without Mr. Peanut Butter, if I'm being real.
Mr. Peanut Butter is like if Todd had brain damage.
I think that's fair. Well, I guess we're neglecting the star here. What are your thoughts about Mr. Horseman and his whole journey?
I felt like it had a satisfying conclusion. I really like the art. I don't know if you want to talk about the conclusion yet in the video. But just to bring up a brief preview on my thoughts on the conclusion. Yeah, I thought his overall arc was very satisfying. I think we can all relate to a character who has his troubles and then slowly grows over time, because that's what all people do. We grow over time. And so I thought it was a very inspiring story. It went to very dark places, which was quite... I'm surprised some of the twists and turns that it took along the way, because it had to take some, balls from the writers to want to go there. And, some of the things Bojack did over the series. Of course, what springs to mind is him almost maybe sleeping with his... Was that his ex in...
They were either exes or friends, but I think her name was Charlotte, if I'm remembering correctly. The deer.
Yeah, and of course, the death of what was her name?
Sarah Lynn.
Sarah Lynn.
Oh my god, a dude at work mentioned that he was watching that, and I was like, did he get there? And he was like, oh yeah, she just died. And I was like... little bit.
But I really credit the writers for being able to go there and then still in the end make us think Bojack was redeemable, because there are a lot of shows. The only one that really comes to mind is, of course, I don't know if you've spoken about it on the channel before, Breaking Bad and some of the things Walter did. I've never seen a character come back from that in the viewer's heart. So yeah, that was really great.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, no matter kind of what happened, you were like, oh, Bojack's an asshole, or Bojack's not really the best guy, but you could see that, oh, he's, he is kind of trying, he's doing this, he's doing that. He's not, a complete asshole monster. And I really appreciated that. But then we got kind of the stuff in, the last season, second to last season, and I kind of like how in the 5th season they went kind of meta with everything, like doing Filbert, especially like that fight that him and Diane had at the premiere, where it's like, oh, I wrote him too relatable and people are like looking up to him. I don't know, I never got, but then again, I never really hung out in like a lot of spaces that talk about Bojack or would talk about Bojack. But I kind of never got the sense that even though he's supposed to be kind of redeemable and you're supposed to sympathize with him, I didn't see it as he would be kind of the type that anyone would kind of idolize or worship like they do Rick from Rick and Morty or Eric Cartman.
Yeah, it really speaks to the power of the writing here, that you still empathize with this character. And again, to bring it back to a Breaking Bad analogy, it's much like a Walter White, where you can still empathize with the character, but any reasonable person doesn't want to be that character.
Yeah.
No one wants to be Bojack Horseman. But yeah, you still feel for him, despite the things you see him do over the series. And it just really takes a powerful writing team to do something like that.
Yeah, it's like what Rick and Morty was supposed to be, but it kind of morphed into something else. Not to shit on Rick and Morty, I still relatively enjoy the show. Not as much lately, with Rick just being an insufferable asshole pretty much, but I think that's kind of what that was supposed to be, and it just kind of took like a hard left, you know. So
Yeah.
what did you think about other characters like Diane? Anybody else? Or
Diane. I feel like I might have some controversial opinions on Diane.
go ahead.
It kind of feels like a Skylar type character.
Ooh,
Again,
that is controversial.
yes, to again bring it back to Breaking Bad comparisons. Sorry for anyone watching this video that has not seen Breaking Bad, but I felt like Diane, like, she wasn't wrong at any point in any of her criticisms, but you know, it's like that scene from The Big Lebowski. You know, you're not wrong, you're just an asshole.
That's very controversial.
Yeah, I just kind of felt like she could be maybe too harsh isn't the right term, but she didn't approach it correctly.
I think that's fair. Like for me, like when everything started, like from what I can remember from the beginning and stuff like that, I was pretty on board with her. Like I could probably relate to her the most. But as like things kept going on, in some senses she became a little bit too self-righteous, you know what I mean? She had her own dirt and her own issues, but yet still sometimes she would be like, oh, but I have the higher ground here, you know? And it's just like, yeah, but in some cases, you know, you're on the same level as Bojack and everyone else. I mean, shouldn't do nearly as much heinous shit as Bojack did, let's be real. But sometimes I kind of felt like, you getting a nosebleed from up there, Diane? But other than that, I did kind of like how everything worked out for her, though. When she got on the antidepressants and stuff, no one was like, Diane got fat or anything like that, you know? Like, everything was kind of chill, which I enjoyed.
Yeah, I feel like people don't give enough credit to Guy for supporting her. Because it was Guy who was really talking to her like, you know, oh, you don't have to do all of this. You don't have to write this book right now. And she was struggling to write her book. Stuff like that. And so, of course, antidepressants mainly probably helped her. But also someone that could rein her in. Because I feel like Diane, she was in a lot of turmoil before she met Guy. And a lot of that turmoil, you know, outside of her depression was the fact that I think she held herself to a higher standard than anyone really should. Or that it's healthy to hold oneself to. And I think that was kind of one of Diane's main problems, is that she expected so much from herself when it really wasn't reasonable.
Yeah, and then also, you know, kind of the people she was around. Bojack is toxic as fuck, and Mr. Peanut Butter, I wouldn't say he's toxic, but that's not someone that I would personally surround myself with, because he's just so kind of stupid and bumbling. I think to a degree that you're right, she held herself to a high standard, and I feel like she also felt that she had to be responsible for other people around her, and it's kind of like a mom situation, like, I have to be good so everyone can see how good I am, and then maybe they'll follow my example and I can like reel them in as well.
Yeah, and another thing is Princess Carolyn. I feel like, you know, she saw Princess Carolyn's success maybe and tried to compare it to her own life. Whereas, you know, Princess Carolyn, strong woman, but you know, she got lucky to become what she was in the Hollywood industry, because, you know, in the Hollywood industry it's mainly about who you know and getting lucky more than any hard work. Not to put down Princess Carolyn for her hard work. What a rock. Speaking of Princess Carolyn. But yeah, I feel like, because, you know, Diane had a lot of back and forth with Princess Carolyn on the phone and stuff like that, giving her advice. And not everyone's cut out to be a Princess Carolyn. And, you know, that's okay. But I feel like Diane saw all that success and wanted it without really thinking, is this something that's feasible for me? We all have to accept our own limits, basically.
Yeah, and I also think the thing with Diane is she even said it herself, she wanted like her issues and her damage, as she would put it, to mean something. And I could kind of relate to that to an extent. Like, we all want our pain to mean something. We all want people to know what we go through. But at the same time, it's kind of like you can't sometimes completely put that out there and expect people to accept it, but not only accept it, to understand it. I mean, our negative experiences shouldn't shape who we are. Of course, they're going to in a way, but they should kind of more push us forward instead of like, but if I don't express this or if I don't do this in a certain way, then all that's for nothing. Like, I mean, I hate to say it, but sometimes it is kind of for nothing not to be this way. I apologize in advance. But, you know, so sometimes it can be for nothing, but it's kind of what you do afterwards.
Yeah. And I think you can really compare Diane's situation with her trauma to Bojack. Bojack got into all of his problems because he's trying to just maybe forget or sweep it under the rug.
Right.
Or just pretend it didn't mean anything to him. And then you have Diane on the other end of the spectrum holding on to it, you know, having to make it mean something in the grand scheme of her life. When both of them just needed to, you know, not necessarily just forget it, but move on, move forward.
Right. I think that's a really good way to put it. So I guess we could start talking about some of the harder stuff. And that's kind of aside from, which I'll talk about, the jump from the tonal shift in the second to last episode to the last episode. Because, woo boy, we were watching it together, and I was pretty mad about that. But the other thing that kind of, like, was, like, it could be a little bit triggering sometimes, especially, like, if you have depression. That's why sometimes I wouldn't want to watch it for long stretches.
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, this is triggering me, and I'm not in a good place for this. So, I need a Bojack break. But I guess we could talk about some of the more serious stuff. Like, I guess, well, we'll start from, I guess, from the earliest, most serious stuff to the latest and work our way to the end here. Sarah Lynn dying, and I guess Bojack's relationship with Sarah Lynn. Obviously a bit complicated. Relationships with any addicts are complicated in general, and then especially, you know, one that you've known since childhood to adulthood. Kind of seeing them as like a father figure and then being on like a level-ish playing field could get kind of messy. And it seemed like he took her death very hard throughout the rest of the series. Like, it was kind of like the catalyst for him to change his life.
Yeah, because not only did he feel like a father figure to Sarah Lynn, you know, playing kind of a literal father figure on Horsing Around, but also that he felt responsible for Sarah Lynn's addiction. And of course he wasn't entirely responsible. Sarah Lynn took the vodka from him, but of course if he hadn't been drinking on set, then it never would have happened. So I feel like that was another big piece to it, that he felt responsible for her addictions.
So, like, you think maybe he felt responsible for her? Is that what you're trying to...
Yeah, he felt responsible for her in more ways than just the father figure thing. Of course, then he also saw her as a friend as well in addiction, because, you know, when you're an addict together with somebody, you know, everybody likes a buddy to do their drugs with.
Yeah.
And to drink with, something like that. And so there was kind of this clash of roles in the way that Bojack should have interacted with Sarah Lynn. And I felt like that weighed on him heavily. And as you said, you know, it was more of a catalyst to his eventual recovery after her death. Because not only did he feel responsible for what happened to her because, you know, he should have drawn her away from that type of a life, but also that he kind of dragged her into it, even though it wasn't intentional on his part, or even through any acts he did. So yeah.
Do you think, though, if he didn't wait in the parking lot so long after she overdosed, do you think she would have survived? And do you think that's also part of, like, I guess a reason he kind of, like, wanted to isolate himself after that?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a hard question to answer. Who knows what would have happened? I can't really exactly remember the timeline on the events. Like, what was it, like 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think it was like either 15 minutes or 17 minutes, like something like that, like a decent chunk of time.
Yeah. it's hard to really tell. Maybe she would have been all right because they have drugs like such as Narcan, because it was heroin she overdosed on.
Right.
And that can bring you back. And also, you can be brought back once you've stopped breathing or your heart stopped for actually a longer chunk of time than most people would think. I've read articles like maybe 10, 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
But of course, once your blood flow to your brain gets cut off, basically when you stop breathing or your heart stops, you have maybe 2 minutes before brain damage sets in.
Oh, that's a good point.
But people have been able to come back from, longer times than 2 minutes and have basically a normal life. So, I think it's hard to really say if he could have saved Sarah Lynn at that point.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fair, to be honest. Like, when they brought that up in the interview, because I forgot that he waited that long to get help. I was kind of like, well, maybe she'd still be alive, but then maybe she would have went out and overdosed again. They could have went on another bender and something could have happened, or she could have went on a bender on her own and something else could have happened. That kind of thing is really hard to say, particularly with addiction. So, New Mexico, when Bojack partying with a teenage kid. Yay!
This one was a really heartbreaking one, because I don't feel like this was entirely Bojack's fault, if I'm being honest. Now, getting alcohol for these kids, certainly his fault.
Right.
But, kids get alcohol poisoning all the time. It's just a common occurrence, unfortunately. Maybe not too common when you don't have an adult literally procuring alcohol for them. And also, an alcoholic, drinking with them, encouraging them to drink more and more, whatever. But, I don't feel like this one was entirely his fault. Of course, how he handled it after the fact. I think he dropped her off outside the hospital and then just pieced out.
Right.
Of course, completely irresponsible. Although I also see his point of view, he would have got locked up. But at some point, you have to take responsibility for your own actions, which is mainly what a lot of addiction counseling is about, learning to take responsibility for your own actions. Which, if you want to move into the addiction counselor whole story, him in rehab.
Yeah.
After this, after you make your thoughts on what happened in New Mexico, I can connect this to.
Well, I guess what I would say with all-encompassing was I'm torn on this arc, because when he's almost kissing his friend's teenage daughter, we don't know what could have happened had the mom not came in. I would like to think that Bojack wouldn't have gone that far, but that's something that you wouldn't know. That was kind of shitty and really skeevy, but, thank God that was stopped. And that's not to say he would have gone that far, but, who fucking knows? And I don't know. I think everyone's kind of to blame in that situation, except for Penny, because she's a teenage girl. Like, when I was a teenage girl, an older guy, and in this case, a movie star, if I was put in that situation, same shit might have happened when I was a teenager. So I can't really fault her for that. But I feel like all of the adults involved should have been like, I even though you're my friend, I think you're kind of getting too close to my daughter. Like, this is kind of becoming somewhat inappropriate. And I felt like it was getting that way before all that stuff happened. Like, oh yeah, go ahead, you can take her to prom. That's cool. Like, you're an old ass man. You're not taking my kid to prom.
I mean, well, you have to remember, what was the mother's name?
I think it was Charlotte.
Charlotte was the mother?
Yeah.
Oh, and Penny was the daughter, right?
Yeah.
I think Charlotte, if that was the mother's name, if we're remembering correctly, she saw Bojack as a trusted friend. And, of course, you'd let your friend hang out with your daughter.
But that much, to that degree?
I mean,
I don't know if I would.
What were they really doing that was inappropriate? I mean, you have to remember, how long was Bojack there?
That's true.
A good couple weeks, right?
Oh, that's true.
If I'm remembering correctly. So, it's kind of a trusted family friend situation. You can't really blame the parents for that. If a good family friend, maybe family member, wanted to take a kid of mine to some event, I probably wouldn't have any problem with that if I trusted this person. And so I think Charlotte just really trusted Bojack. She hadn't really known how far Bojack had fallen in his addictions at that point.
Well, that's true. That's
and how how much his judgment had really been warped by the drugs and alcohol.
That's true. That's fair. Yeah. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh, but like I said, I kind of think all of the adults involved there could have just done better, and a lot of that situation could have been avoided. And you wanted to talk about rehab, which I guess would have been the next logical step anyway.
Yeah. So after Bojack gets to rehab, he has that moment where he runs out with that one girl after mistakenly telling her exactly how to escape. And then she surprisingly does it. And he goes with her. And they end up in this situation. And there's this very tense moment at the party where you think he might drink again. And he doesn't. But then he goes to her house or whatever. And she's like wrecking stuff and everything. And the father comes out and speaks to him frankly about what his daughter always gets into, what she always gets up to. And I think that was a major moment of clarity for Bojack, more than really any he had in the therapy itself, oddly. The therapy itself couldn't get to him, but someone being frank to him about their daughter's addiction could get to him. And so he really realized that that's one of the big things. He has to take responsibility for his actions, something that this girl clearly isn't doing, if he wants to move forward.
Yeah, and I also think it was a good step that he kind of was like, whoa, wait, no, this is out of control. And, he was trying to reel her in, get her back to rehab and everything like that, trying to stop her from doing crazy, stupid shit. So I think that was a big step for him, instead of being kind of an enabler in the situation, being like, whoa, wait a minute, let's reel this back here. I think that was a really big step.
Yeah, it was a big step, because in Alcoholics Anonymous, I understand, one of the key tenets is service.
Right.
Once you get clean, you're expected to become, when you're ready, a sponsor for another alcoholic. To be on the other side, telling someone not to drink. To be their shoulder to cry on, give them advice. And so it was a really clever move on the writer's part to have that one of the things that really snaps Bojack out of it, because he hadn't been entirely on board with his rehab until then, or not entirely on board isn't the right term, because he was wanting to stay there, but to realize that maybe he could do this himself.
Yeah. And then I guess another thing at rehab was we could talk about him getting the therapy horse back on alcohol. But I felt like that wasn't Bojack's fault. I mean, should he have had the vodka bottle there? No, I understand why he had that water bottle with the vodka, but I honestly don't think that was his fault.
I think that was his fault, but that was the thing that made Bojack realize he had kept that bottle of vodka, let's be real, not as a reminder of Sarah Lynn, like he was deluding himself into, thinking it was, but as a way to fuck up. As an excuse to give himself to make a mistake, just to be like, I'll just drink a little bit of this. That's what I think he was going for there, because that's the mindset a lot of addicts get into. Is, I have this. Nah, I'm not going to use it, but I'll keep it around. Whereas someone who's really committed to recovery, you get rid of it. Because otherwise you will eventually turn to it if you're a real addict. So Bojack kept that around as an excuse for him to fuck up. But then when the therapy horse accidentally chugs it all, he realized that, I think what he realized is that him giving himself an excuse to fuck up does not only affect him, it affects the people around him. And the people close to him, the people trying to help him, like this therapy horse trying to help him. And now he's an alcoholic again because of Bojack's actions. And so that's another moment that Bojack, he realizes he can't give himself an excuse. He has to really be firm and stay on the path, because it's not only affecting him, it's affecting the people around him. And of course, he could have also had this realization when Sarah Lynn died, but of course he was still in the midst of his addiction at the time, which, warps your view of events.
Yeah, and at that time, I don't think he really, wanted to get clean still, because they had that bender, and then he was like, oh yeah, well, this is sad, it sucks, but I just need to get away, and then still continue to not change, because I don't want to change yet. I just want to get away. And that's kind of the biggest thing with addiction or any kind of toxic behavior. You have to actually want to change to make things better for yourself and the people around you.
Yeah.
And then the second interview.
Oh boy, the second interview.
Which we've kind of been rehashing all the points from the second interview, which is kind of what I've been leading with this whole time. Just kind of things that whoever brought it up. Obviously, the second interview was a gigantic mistake. He should have just did the one, and I think he would have been fine. But as I've been kind of saying throughout this, and I guess Matt's been saying throughout this as well, some of the things could objectively not be seen as Bojack's fault. So I felt like in that second interview, things were kind of loaded up, so it seemed like it was completely on Bojack when the situation sometimes were not on Bojack. And that's not to excuse his behavior, because like I said, I think the shit that happened in New Mexico was pretty gross, that for sure. And possibly he could have saved Sarah Lynn, or at least, in that situation, it could have been okay. But the second interview was definitely a mistake, and it kind of, I think, ruined any kind of potential that he had to have come out of that clean. But on the other hand, I think he kind of needed to fuck up in that second interview to kind of make sure that his life kept on the track it was going. Because I feel like after the first one was a success, he was kind of feeling himself a little too much. Like, he's like, oh, I'm scot-free. And it wasn't about him getting off scot-free. Obviously, he should have realized some of the shit that I did was fucked, but I'm just going to try to move forward and be better instead of, I'm scot-free, I'm untouchable. So, that's kind of my thoughts on the second interview and the fallout.
Yeah, I think we were both horrified when he had that phone call where he agreed to the second interview.
You never do a second interview.
Yeah, because it's always going to be a gotcha. They're always going to bring up some stuff to contradict you on your first one. So, listeners, if you ever get a second interview, don't go in for that second interview.
Unless it's a job interview. Then you go in for that second interview. But, if you're in trouble and you're trying to clear shit up, don't go in for that second one. Because they'll be like, gotcha, bitch. And then it won't be good. And then I guess kind of the last thing I want to touch on Bojack-wise is Hollyhock. Do you think she should have ended her relationship with him?
I don't really know. I think Hollyhock's relationship with Bojack, I mean, of course, originally she thought he was her father, right?
Right, yeah.
Then they find out they're just brothers, brother-sister. I think Hollyhock was a little harsh, but of course, it's difficult to have a relationship with an addict. And of course, you also view their actions differently if you're not looking at it through the lens of an addiction, which I think was Hollyhock's main problem with Bojack. She wasn't looking at, did he do this stuff because that's who he really is inside? Or did he do this stuff because he was just addicted to drugs and alcohol, which warps even the most sane person's moral compass?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. I think everything that happened was too soon in their relationship. Like her finding out what happened in New Mexico and then the second interview. Since their relationship was so new, all of that, especially at her age, I think would dissuade anybody from having a good, solid relationship. The last two episodes, because I have thoughts. I thought the second to last episode, I think, what was it called? View from Halfway Down?
Yes.
Good episode. I liked a lot of the symbolism, the dinner party, the performance. There was lots of detailing that was really good. Like when Bojack got the water, he was like, "Oh, it tastes like chlorine," and it's like, "He's in the pool. He was in the pool." Not to like bring levity to it, because it was all very serious and it was well done. But then you get like the last episode, and it's kind of like, "Haha, got you," and I was a little mad about that. Like I was like, "Oh, thank God he's not dead." But I was like, you can't just like emotionally like fucking punch someone down like that and then just be like, "Haha, kidding, he's fine. He's just in jail."
Yeah, I also really liked a lot of the foreshadowing leading to the View from Halfway Down. Of course, the biggest piece of foreshadowing, the show's opening.
Yeah.
Always ending with him in the pool. People looking down on him. And then another big piece of foreshadowing was the painting.
Yeah.
That I believe I pointed out to you.
Yeah, you did.
Of the horse floating in the pool and another one looking down on him. And I believe it was a reference to some movie or something. And then Bojack says, "I thought the painting was about me."
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was it. And you know, it turns out it was about him. But
and then, the other big piece of foreshadowing being that the therapy horse, they have the conversation where the therapy horse makes them crack, like, "Oh, and you told me all about your dreams where you have to go to some dinner party."
Yeah. And like I said, it was a great episode. Like, probably one of my favorite episodes in any show ever. But just the tonal shift of it all. And the last episode was good too. I think it gave a good, despite the jarring shift in tone, I think it gave good closure. Princess Carolyn getting married to Judah, which was kind of surprising. Like, I wouldn't have called that. And then, you know, the talk he has with Diane at the end, and she's kind of like, maybe we won't be friends anymore after this. Bojack's kind of sad about that, and there's like a quiet moment between them, and him kind of mending fences with Todd, which was good. So it was a good episode. I liked the way it ended, but I just didn't like the complete shift in tone. It was a little jarring, and I was a little mad. But other than that, I think the ending was good.
I actually really enjoyed the second to last episode. I liked the tonal shifts, because it gave a good break from what the rest of the show was. One of the first ones, one of those first major tonal shifts, was, I believe, the episode that had almost no dialogue underwater, and then the second one being the wake for his mother, or the funeral or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And then, of course, this last one being the View from Halfway Down. I really like the tension throughout the episode. Like, is he dying?
Yeah, like...
Of course, you know, maybe halfway into the episode, once they sit down for dinner, that he's in the pool. That he's dying. But, you know, is anybody going to save him, you know? I liked the tension. Of course, I felt like if they'd killed Bojack, that would have been a mistake for the show. Of course, sometimes addicts die after long, long struggles. But I felt like it would have been too dark. Way too dark. But I enjoyed this episode as a good, you know, builder of tension. It's the second to last episode. I don't blame them for wanting to bring some tension into the finale. Yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I really it really made your heart race.
Oh, it did.
Is what it was happening for me.
We were like gripping onto each other the whole time.
It was one of those edge of your seat moments, which doesn't happen often, and you know what is mainly a comedy.
Or, I won't say or an animated series, but I guess like an American animated series. Like, you get that in anime a lot, where you're like, oh my god! And you just like gripping stuff and you're white knuckled, but not so much in like an American animated series. And then just kind of to end on like a light note, can we just talk about how much of a goat Princess Carolyn is? At the end of it, I just loved her to bits.
Absolutely.
Yeah, at first, you know, you kind of don't like her because she's all business and stuff, but you see Bojack kind of taking advantage of her and stuff, and then she's like, well, fuck this. And then, you know, whenever she's got a challenge and someone tries to fuck her, you know, she's like, nope, fuck this, I'm just going to keep going. In the end, she did manage to have everything that she wanted. She got the husband. Judah is also great. Also good guy for her, which I didn't expect. Got the baby. The career. She did have to kind of compromise for things, and she still ended up having it all. And I think that's a good message for women. Like, you can have it all, but you just kind of have to balance it in a way that's manageable.
Yeah. I just like the end kind of message the viewer can take from the show, which anyone might, possibly struggling with addiction, could really gain a lot from. You know, Bojack had this strong base, but at the end it wasn't really about them. It was about his own struggle, and it wasn't Diane helping him. It wasn't Mr. Peanut Butter being annoying as shit. It wasn't Todd trying to help him out as best he could and forgive him. It wasn't Princess Carolyn being his rock and his agent. It was Bojack. Bojack finally facing what he's done, giving a shit, and making the change necessary. And I feel like it's just a really powerful message.
Yeah,
and that was
my
real favorite part of the series. That it was a realistic depiction of what someone, after years of addiction, finally recovering looks like.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree how, like I said, when you're an addict, or if you have any kind of toxic personality or behavior, it's about wanting to change. And for the longest time, we saw Bojack not wanting to change, him falling deeper and deeper into the cycle until he was finally like, I want to change. And he followed through on that change. He accepted responsibility. And I really liked the person that Bojack ended up becoming. Is he perfect? No. But at least he's trying to be the best version of himself that he could be.
The real sea biscuit of horses that he could be.
So I guess we will wrap up and end there. Overall, Bojack Horseman, good show. You should watch it if you haven't. Let us know what you thought about Bojack. You like it, dislike it, hate what we said, loved what we said. Let us know. Should we sing them the song? You want to sing?
What song?
Our remix of the ending. Oh, okay. All right, we're going to do it. You guys ready? Back in the 90s, I was in a very famous TV show. Woo. I'm Bojack the Horseman. Bojack the Horseman. You don't know.
And I'm trying to hold on to my past. It's been so long, I don't think I'm gonna last. I'm trying to make you understand. Am I a horse or a man? Or am I more man than a horse? Bojack. We'll see you guys next time. Bye. 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 Bye.